Algebras, and we are starting chapter 3. So, because we are starting chapter 3, I just want to give you a quick overview of our functions chapter. Okay, so we're going to be talking all about basic function work. We're going to start with, let me just say, chapter 3 is yellow, right? Yellow. I, of course, always use white paper, that's what I'm writing on and keeping track on everything. But we printed for you a yellow chapter 3 packet. So you have the same thing I have, just in this yellow packet. All right. I've got mine off to the side over here. Regardless, let's take a look at our front page of our packet, which is our overview of functions, right? So we're going to start today with lesson 1, which is all about functions versus relations. Then we're going to talk about identifying different types of functions from their equation or their graph. Then we're going to talk about something called domain and range, which are probably familiar words, but we're going to really define them. We're going to do a homework and then a matching activity. I'm not going to have a video separate for the matching activity, but it is going to be a separate assignment and day for you. Okay? Then we're going to have lesson 4. So all about notation and evaluation. And that's probably going to look familiar, but what we're going to do is have this new notation as naming our functions. Then, of course, a review in our chapter 3 quiz will be in Delta Math. Then we're going to use the calculator to graph functions. And so I'll do 2 days of notes, 2 days of lessons, walking you through using the graphing calculator. Because it's graphing calculator work, you will A, want to have your graphing calculator, but B, they will probably be longer notes just because of how much it takes to talk you through using the buttons and using the different pieces. Okay, so just an FYI, those are thicker notes, which is why your packet is so big for only 7 lessons, because I showed you all my screens walking through everything. So even if I'm not present, you have each of the screens and how to type everything in. And so there's very clear directions on how to use the graphing calculator, but there's always the TI website, and then there's always this video as backup plans. Then we start talking about transformations of functions and describing changes in functions. I'll do one last little graphing functions with domain and range, and then we'll talk about having our exam in Delta Math, right? So chapter 3 exam review, and then chapter 3 exam will be in Delta Math, where we're taking all our assessments. Okay, so let's begin with functions and relations. All right, so this is chapter 3, lesson 1, relations and functions. And the first thing you need to know is that a relation is any group of points. Anytime I give you a group of points, I am handing you a relation. Okay? Anytime. A function is a relation. So a function is a group of points, where in that group of points, the x value is not used more than once. So a function does not have a repeated x value. All right? That's what's going to be special about a function, is that your x value in a function will not be used more than once. So all functions are relations. Not all relations are functions. And that's what we're going to go through. So the easier way to describe everything will be if it's a function or not a function. And that's how I will do things as we move forward. There is a completely separate lesson on these 2 words, but domain and range are the words we use to describe the x and y values that get covered by any of your functions and relations. Okay, so anytime you're looking at a group of points, I talk about the x values as your domain, and I talk about the y values as your range. Okay? Totally separate lessons on those two things, but this is the time that you're learning those vocab words. All right. The domain is the set of X values being used. The range is the set of Y values being used. Now we're going to identify functions versus not functions. Okay. One of the pictures got weirdly messed up. These two pictures got weirdly messed up. So I'm going to show them on my screen so we know how to answer those questions. But we'll start with in point form. So there's a lot of ways that I can represent a relation. I can represent a relation by just listing off the points to you. I can represent a relation in a table. I can represent a relation in what we call a map, and I'll show you the correct picture for that on my screen. And I can represent a relation on a graph. And when you're looking at these relations that I'm representing to you, you need to decide if this relation is a function or not a function. And each time we're going to explain that so we really get it in our heads that this is either the X values are repeated or they're not. Okay. If the X values are repeated, this relation is not a function. If the X values are not repeated, this relation is a function. And that's the bottom line. And so that's what we're going to work on here. So when I'm given a whole bunch of points like this and asked, is it a function or not a function? I look specifically at my X values. -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Were any X values repeated? No, this is a function. Explain. X values were not, sorry, scooch, so you can see it, repeated. There we go. Okay, next set of points. Look at your X values. 0, 1, 1, 4, 4. Uh-oh. Is this relation a function or not a function? It's not a function. The reason? X values were repeated. So this is not a function. Okay, let me pull up my picture. All right, so this is what it's actually supposed to look like at the bottom here. Okay, and I'll write it on my paper, but this is what it's actually supposed to be. Thanks for making that full screen. That's cool. I didn't ask for that. All right, here we go. Look at your table. Okay, look at your X values in your table. Notice your table goes X is on the left, Y is on the right. And so look down your X values. Do you have any repeated X values for A? That's a function. Okay, and again, I'm going to write it right here on my table, but no repeated, I'll do X's, X values, not repeated. There, I'll change it. Oh, you can't see it because this thing made it full screen when it shouldn't be. Ah, there we go. X values not repeated. Okay. Now over here. So this one is this table right here that of course got cut off, but at least you can see on your paper that X values were repeated. So right here, this is not a function. So this is a function. This is not a function. So I wrote NAF, right? Not a function. And that's because X values were repeated. Okay, and that's the difference. If X values are repeated, then you do not have a function. And if X values are not repeated, then you do not have, or then you have a function. Okay, that's how it works. I have no clue what happened here because this document you see on my screen is what I sent to the printer. Yikes. At any rate, okay, so we've got this map. And in a mapping form, so I'm just going to do a quick sketch of my map. Okay, in a mapping form, these are the X values or the domain, and these are the Y values, the range. So it's very similar to a table. This arrow is telling you that the X value 3 results in a 7. So it's giving you a point like this. This arrow is telling you that an x value 4 results in an 8. This arrow right here is telling you that an x value 4 results in a 9. Do you have repeated x values? And if you have repeated x values, which you do, 4 is used twice, this is not a function because 4 is used twice. And x values cannot repeat in functions. And it is just that simple and straightforward. I have no idea what happened here. I'm really sorry, but thankfully we could pull this guy up so you could see that I didn't give you a crazy photo. I gave you a real life thing that, yikes, in the printer. Okay? Okay. Now, I get to get rid of this guy. Since we're good after this. Now, what about in graphs? Well, we have something called the vertical line test. And that tells us if we have a function or not a function. And it's just about repeated x values because vertical lines are a repeated x value into infinity. And if you can draw a vertical line anywhere on your graph that you've been given, and that vertical line touches more than once on your graph, then you have a repeated x value. And if you have a repeated x value, that's not a function. So what this picture is showing us is a bunch of points, and I'm just encircling these points so you can see them more clearly. This is a relation because it's a bunch of points on a graph. This relation is not a function because it's failing the vertical line test. When I draw a vertical line right here on my graph, I see that it touches twice. So you have a repeated x value. And if you look at the points listed out, that repeated x value is right here. It's a 1. It got repeated. Okay, so this is just a pictorial view of the points listed out. Here is a relation again, because this was the relation. Okay, so this is your infinite group of points creating a graph. And I was able to draw a vertical line that then touched that graph twice. So you have a repeated x value. And that's why if a relation fails the vertical line test, it's just like saying an x value was repeated. Okay, so the vertical line test works when determining if a graph represents a function because a vertical line is a repeating x value. If you have repeating x values, you don't have a function. And so if a vertical line can touch your graph twice, you've got a repeating x value because a vertical line is a repeating x value. And nowhere more so than right here is a whole bunch of graphs that I didn't put on coordinate planes. I just kind of drew them for you so that we can see how the vertical line test works. So let's imagine that these are graphs on my coordinate plane. And if I draw a vertical line anywhere on this graph, I'm only going to touch it once, right? So this thing is a function. All right? But this is not a function because my vertical line touched it twice. So this is not a function. And I will allow you to write NAF for not a function. So you can abbreviate that if you must. I actually refer to it as toothpaste, being a big chemistry fan myself. Sodium fluoride. Sodium is Na in chemistry on the periodic table. Fluoride is F. NAF is the active ingredient in your toothpaste. Sodium fluoride. Anyway. Hey, what about this guy? I could draw vertical lines till I'm blue in the face or blue in the pen. Ha ha ha. And I am never touching this more than once. And so that means that this guy is a function. So this relation is a function. All these guys are relations, but some of them are functions and some of them are not. Here's another relation that I'm imagining all these vertical lines. I'm seeing visually these vertical lines. They're not touching it more than once. This is a function. Here is a vertical line, and look at that. A vertical line is failing its own test because a vertical line is repeated x values into infinity. And so, for that reason, a vertical line is not a function. We'll talk about that more extensively in chapter 4 when we talk about lines in general. And of course, a circle has repeated x values. So right here, we see in our vertical line test, we could draw a vertical line that touches it in 2 spots at the same time. That means it's not a function. And that's it. You just need to look at things on your homework in the different forms I've shown you and say, is this thing, is this relation I've given you a function or not a function? And you need to explain. So it'll be the x values have repeated or the x values have not repeated. Okay? If x values repeat, it is not a function. If x values do not repeat, your relation is a function. Okay? But please don't just write things are relations because all the things I give you are relations. So I want more detail. Is it a function or not a function? Okay? This is the basics for starting our function chapter, right? We need to be able to tell if something is a function. So please let me know if you need any help. I am here to help you. Otherwise, you're looking at these pictures and these maps and these points and these tables, and you are telling me if you have a function or not a function, and then you are explaining your answer based on the x values. All right? You got this, algebra. I shall be seeing you. Have a lovely day.